I've never seen anything like it before, and to attempt to hit the ball out of there is pure madness.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Cameron Smith.
This is the one that I've always wanted to win since I was a little kid. So it just feels pretty amazing to be able to get it done today.
It's amazing that it's my destiny to be the first Aussie to win. Just incredible.
Hello and welcome to episode 33 of Playing from the Tips podcast, our special Ryder Cup preview episode presented by Golf Australia magazine. Jimmy Emanuel here in the renamed captain's chair ahead of a huge week as all the eyes of world golf turn on Italy and Marco Simone Golf and Country Club for the 44th Ryder Cup. We'll also turn some minor attention towards the LPGA and Asian tours this week, and joining me to do so are two assistant captains in the studio. The first is the Manuel Pinheiro to my Bernard Gallagher, as a man assisting from the start of the assistant captain co-host concept, Rod Morri. Rod, welcome.
Manuel Pinheiro might be the nicest thing anybody's ever called me professionally.
We follow that up with a little bit of information. There's also the final comparison where Pinheiro's Wikipedia includes, since turning 50 in 2002, Pinheiro has played on the European Seniors Tour, but he's had little success at that level. Yeah. That's where I felt the comparison really came in.
It's all dovetailing beautifully.
I mean, who wrote Manuel's Wikipedia page, just quietly? That's very unkind.
Manuel's ex-wife, perhaps, or something?
Yeah, well, that's true, actually. Maybe Manuel he doesn't like himself as a player anymore. Next is a more modern example of the assistant captain concept. Like Nicholas Colsaerts this year, Ewan Porter is a generational ball-striking talent who mixes his time between television commentary and playing golf, and whose antics were sometimes considered unconventional in the US during his playing days. Ewan, welcome.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. Yeah. I actually like that introduction.
There's a story there. What is this unconventional
I think that's my life in general.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a specific incident you're trying to allude to?
No, there's
it's not
incidents.
a joke that I'm missing. Okay.
No. But yeah, I think that's fair on. Ewan is, of course, replacing Adrian Logue, who kind of like Tiger Woods as an assistant captain in 2018, has ditched this kind of environment to jet in and play or be at the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, that's exactly right. No, thanks, Logue.
Thanks, Logue. Yeah, we had to buy our own coffees this morning. It's a disgrace. As we always do before we move forward, some highlights from last week, which I think everyone, Solheim Cup, final day action particularly.
Clearly Solheim Cup, but to move away from that, because that's the obvious answer, and everybody, that was the right world event to have all the attention, but Thongchai Jaidee winning on the Champions Tour.
How good.
Hey?
And what a venue to do it.
Yeah, if you're a golf fan, that was just, I didn't read anything about it, didn't see much, but I just saw that he'd won. It's like, that's good stuff. That's good karma in the world. Thongchai. Good.
It's terrific, and I mean he's obviously had so many wins over the last 20, 25 years, but also a couple of guys that finished in the top four there, Justin Leonard, who Jaidee beat in a playoff, and Paul Stankowski, who's had a fantastic year. Both Leonard and Stankowski the last few years have been broadcasting.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to turn your attention back to full-time playing, and obviously it's worked out well for them.
It's a great event, that.
It's got the
Beach
kids
for the
involved.
Champions Tour with the kids involved and everything. Rod Pampling played Pebble on his birthday because of it. Yeah. Richard Green played well the first day. Speaking of Richard Green, Australians also actually had an amazing week last year. I think there was 5 runners-up across different tours, including Mark Leishman, Minjee Lee, Curtis Luck, Travis Smythe, and there's one more I'm forgetting about, I think.
And Hannah Green played in the Solheim Cup, according to the TV commercial.
Yeah, according to the TV,
nice,
yeah.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Scotland's Hannah Green, as Huggy's been saying for that long. Solheim Cup, kind of a perfect, not a warm-up, that discredits it to this week, after Stacey Lewis early in the week sort of said, we missed a chance here. I agree with that too.
They didn't like that.
The PGA did not like that, no.
Pressure's on the Ryder Cup in some ways. That was such a remarkable Solheim Cup. It's going to actually be a bit of a tough act to follow.
That final day, that had everything in terms of a tie, which has never happened in the Solheim Cup, retaining the cup for Europe, so the big celebrations. Saganda was brilliant on that last day.
Couldn't have scripted a better ending, could you, with Saganda, local hero, hitting that shot on 17, and then actually the other player that sort of flew under the radar was Caroline Headwell.
Who 5 birdies in the last 6 holes.
Captain's picked 3 down and finishes
2 up.
Like a house on fire.
Rod was giving Caroline Headwell all the ups last week as a great pick, and then Huggy tried to shut it down on the Good Golf podcast
your
as a good
face,
pick.
Huggy.
So, John Huggan, eat your heart out.
But some players are like that, aren't they, Ewan? She is the right person for that tournament. She clearly struggles and has ups and downs, but every time she's been to the Solheim Cup, this other player comes out in her. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah, and gets motivated too by the moment. Some people flounder in that situation, and she doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all done in front of the King of Spain on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Didn't know Spain still had a king, if I'm honest. But
when you retain in Spain, lots of people complain.
yeah, they
I had
sure
to get
do.
that out. I thought of that last night.
And I thought your column yesterday was very good about the controversy around a tie. It's actually a good thing because people are talking about it post the result, and into next year there'll still be a bit of stuff.
The people that complain about, I think,
the people that complain about a tie being a retaining for the country that the team that won it, it's silly. It's how it's always been.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's how team golf.
And
is.
it hardly ever happens.
Correct me if I'm wrong. 20 years ago, 2003, President's Cup, South Africa, tie between US and internationals. Correct. Ernie and Tiger were sent out, and then they kept tying until it got dark, correct?
Yeah,
that's right.
And they pulled it off. So President's Cup, they played slightly different. But they don't do that in the President's Cup anymore either.
No.
It's the same way, I believe.
Rabbit hole, when I interviewed Mary Thompson late last year, the year before, she told me that the envelope that Peter had for the 98 President's Cup with the player's name in it who would be sent out in case of a tie is still in the house, still sealed. Nobody knows who it is.
Oh, wow.
The temptation every day must be off the
I think it could be Peter Thompson.
Yeah, Pete Thompson.
Peter
Might have set himself out.
I'd love to see the captains go out.
Who was
and have to play
was Nicholas? Who was the captain that week
Yeah,
for the US?
Nicholas. Yeah.
Thompson Nicholas,
Yeah.
Royal Melbourne.
Nicholas, yeah.
How good would that be?
Oh.
Just send them down one west to play each other to decide it. Yeah. That'd be great. On last week, and we had a fair bit of success as tipsters. 2 wins of sorts with the Solheim Cup, with Logan and I picking Europe and Rod begrudgingly kind of picking the US.
Well, let's be frank. You didn't win, did you? I didn't lose.
We got the trophy.
So we're just going to have to wait till next year to sort it out.
Let's give ourselves another win. And we had 5 top 10s as well. Notably, my pick of Mark Leishman, which was mocked by my fellow experts in this room, who ran second at Live Chicago. So that takes us to 23 wins and 162 top 10s for this year. Now, on to this week and the resumption of hostilities between American and European men in Rome, with a new-look US side looking to retain the trophy won in dominant fashion 19-9 at Whistling Straits. You forget how
brutal. And
how
it was
much of a
awful
pummeling
to
that
watch. I don't even care if you're a US spectator. You can't enjoy watching that. The key to these things is they have to be close. It's the problem the President's Cup's had. Every time it's been close, there was that Korea, I think 2015, Royal Melbourne last time. That's what made it interesting. You have these blowouts, and it's like nobody wants to watch that.
What happened at was it Liberty
National?
Yeah,
Liberty National is
it was almost over.
That's right.
By Saturday.
I think was it Lahiri finally hold a putt to save it to make sure they had to play on Sunday.
Yeah, that's no fun for anyone.
I think a few months ago, I think this was sort of being spoken about as a blowout to the US side, in favour of the US side, but I don't think so.
Oh, this Ryder
Cup.
Yeah, no, I don't think so at all.
Couldn't agree more.
First point of reference is the course, and given his Italian heritage, Rodney Morri is going to jump on all the relevant details of Marco Simone or Marco Simone.
Simone, that's right. Well, given my Italian heritage, it's going to be more embarrassing when I start butchering these names. So the venue itself is really, really interesting. The golf course we'll talk about shortly, and it'll produce a good result, as we saw last week. Finca Courtesane was not a great golf course, but we had a great tournament. Home to an 11th century castle. Might have actually been there's really strong ties to women here. It's owned by a fashion designer called Lavinia Biagiotti Signa.
Beautifully done.
Whose mother, Laura Bagnotti Signa, was one of Italy's most famous fashion designers in the 80s. Her mother, Lavinia's grandmother, designed the uniforms for the cabin crew of the national airline Alitalia in the 1960s. Started life as a dressmaker. They built this empire, this fashion design, which is now into the 3rd generation. They've got this amazing castle. Anyway, she and her husband bought the castle in the 1970s. I think built the golf course in the late 80s, early 90s. The course superintendent here is a woman, Lara Arias, whose fiancé, possibly now husband, was the course super at Le Golf National in 2018. So there's lots of ties. That's right. Wikipedia is all over this. little details to
You
but
gave it
really
away. I thought you might have just rattled that off.
Might have just been calling Marco Simone going, can I get some details about the Super?
So, look, and I really thought that is all very, very interesting stuff. None of it will have anything to do with the golf when it comes around, but I did find that really interesting. So you'll be able to see the castle on the coverage, obviously, that people aren't allowed to go in there. We're only 10 miles from the centre of Rome, which I find stunning. I can't imagine there's a golf course within 10 miles of the centre. There's not a tree within 10 miles of the centre of Rome, but like enough space for a golf course. So that is really quite unique. It's, as anybody who knows anything about the course will know, it's steep. It's going to be a tough walk for the caddies. I think Huggy might have told me they may have the option to carry bags.
Yeah, they do. So Huggy did tell us last week.
The second rounds, yeah.
They've got carry bags as an option. Apparently it was an option at Whistling Straits, maybe? He suggested it had been an option before that hadn't been taken. But it was not an option last week because they hadn't got organised and had carry bags ready for the teams with all the logos. Yeah. But it's an option and that one that they actually might take up this week.
What are you telling? How big would the difference be, do you reckon, between a tour bag and a carry bag?
Well, it's significant in terms of waterproofs and stuff like that.
Leaving everything out of the bags themselves.
Oh, totally.
Double the weight? Tour bag versus
absolutely.
I would have thought so.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at roughly 50 pounds, just over 20 kilos for a staff bag. Yeah, I'd say 12-ish for a carry bag.
Yeah.
If that.
You can then tell who the good guys of the players are who let their caddy carry a carry bag rather than a staff bag.
You can see where the tensions are. If we lose in the morning, you're lugging that this afternoon if we can.
Note for anyone thinking about that, photos of me caddying for Aaron Pike, it's always a staff bag.
I'm always fascinated by just how good a job and how fit you have to be a caddy, and especially when you're going 36 holes. I know when I do the PGA Tour live stuff in America, I'm walking 27 holes a day, and when you do that in 35-degree heat, you're looking at upwards of 20,000 steps. Add an extra 9 holes to that, and a Hillier golf course here in Italy.
And they've got to run to keep up half the time. If they've done the divots and the bunker raking, you've got to run to catch up with the player to give them the clubs, and it's
exhausting. We'll always have the bunker man with each group.
It's a tough gig. It is a tough gig. There's no shortage of pressure on the caddies either. I mean,
no, it's a big deal.
They don't get the accolades. They don't get the roasting either, but they feel it. They're part of it. I mean, that's a seriously hardcore thing to do. Anyway, so they will be earning. Well, will they be earning their money this way? I guess they get paid by the PGA. Yeah. I assume they.
I think they do get a stipend out of the PGA.
They have to get some sort of stipend. Anyway, they're going to work for their money. The original course here opened in '91, designed by Jim Fazio and David Mezzacant. There's nothing left of it.
No,
they completely decimated. I think they've only used one. I think the sixth hole is on. The only hole is on the playing corridor that used to be taken up. That was all done in 2018. There have been 4 Italian Opens hosted there between then and now to get ready for this week, and I think they've done a good job. They've tweaked the golf course every year, and it's actually gotten better and better every year, it seems. I actually think the course is
I think one of the great things for this week and the golf course is that it's been there every week for the Italian Open, so you've got a chance to have a look at it.
And tour players playing it.
Exactly, and you're having a good look. And
I was very surprised this year that no Americans went over and played the Italian Open, because I know on the European side of things, you've got Nikolai Højgaard, who's won there. Tommy Fleetwood had a chance to win that same week. McIntyre's won there.
Yep. Rory's played there.
Rory's played and almost won.
Didn't play there this year, but has played there. It's a great experience for the players, number one, but it's so good for a fan to be
to see.
Experienced. Le Golf National showed that because they go there every year. You know the holes, you know what's coming, and the match might hinge on this. Whereas you got that a little bit with places like Whistling Straits that's had majors, but we don't see it as a regular stop, which is, I think, really exciting.
For a player, though, Ewan, at that level, they are so good, these players, aren't they? Every time the President's Cups come to Royal Melbourne, we've always thought, they won't be able to figure out Royal Melbourne. And they figure it out in a practice round. It's pretty amazing. How much do you reckon that really plays into it, having been on the course before?
I think it does play a huge role, and I think we saw that at Le Golf National when I think Justin Thomas was the only American to go over and play the French Open prior, and it was set up very much to the Europeans' liking, and unlike what the Americans are used to, and the Americans struggled. And it would not surprise me if we see a similar theme here. And I know the Americans went over on a private jet and had an 18-hole practice round. That's not the same as playing it in a tournament environment. Obviously, the Americans on paper are the stronger side, but I think the course setup and the knowledge will favour the Europeans.
Yeah. And it's a different format too. You can have all the paper you like, but once you get two blokes standing on a tee facing each other,
which, as we discussed last week about Solheim Cup, the course plays less of a role than it ever does in tournament golf. It dictates the type of golf that they play, probably, but it doesn't dictate the result so much.
It takes players out of their comfort zone, doesn't it, this format?
Yeah.
And it makes them think about or hit shots they would never consider in stroke play, because you kind of have to. Once the person you're playing against has done something, well, you've got no choice. You've now got to try and answer it, whether you're comfortable with that shot or not. And as you know, being out of your comfort zone is no fun for a player.
I mean, how often do you see in match play, at no matter what level, you hear, I lost 2 and 1, I lost 4 and 3, but he was 7 under, I was 4 under, I was 5. And to your point, it makes you think more positively, this match play format, obviously more aggressively, but it makes you just focus on what you need to do and not think about repercussions. Yeah. That's why we see a lot of birdies, a lot of good scoring. And
it's not a defensive format, is it? No. Nothing defensive about match play.
Not at all.
You're always, if you
I can't remember who her partner was, but Lynn Grant and
Stark?
I don't think it was Stark. One of her partners on the Saturday of the Solheim Cup was something like 10 under through.
Yeah, that's right. Through 11 or 12 holes.
Well, you mentioned him before, Colsaerts, when he played alongside Lee Westwood at Medina in 20. They were playing Tiger and Stricker.
Yeah.
Colsaerts shot 10 under our Medina.
Yeah. Crazy good.
Yeah. One of Westwood's great passenger rounds, I think he's described it as.
He was just there.
Having said that, though, Colsaerts himself, I interviewed him about that a few years ago at the Australian Masters, and he said that it was Westwood who told him everything that he needed to know to produce it.
Yeah.
Without him, he'd have been a bundle of nerves, wouldn't have been able to play. But Westwood just guided him. He said it was just amazing. He said, do this, do this, do this. He just did as he was told. Yeah. Anyway, as I said, really hilly, which means lots and lots of slope in the greens and around the greens. The yardage is not particularly long, but doesn't mean much with a course that's this steep. A 350-yard uphill par 4 is very different to a 350-yard flat par 4. So you can't read too much into the numbers, though. It is not an overly long course. There'll be fair few short irons. What might be really interesting, they've got multiple tees on a lot of the holes, which can really change the difference. So the seventh hole can play anywhere from 160 to 220 yards.
Wow.
Two completely different golf holes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And you wonder whether they'll have the courage to do that, and whether that might favour one side or the other. I don't know whether you remember this. It was at Olympic Club 2012. Jim Furyk spat it because they moved the tee up on the par 5, the 16th, like 100 yards, and he was caught out. We had the same complaints at Chambers Bay. The US Open players couldn't deal with the course changing. So there was that par 3 where they had one tee was 60 yards that way and another was completely different angles, and the players didn't like it at all. So you wonder whether they might.
They do give you a heads up, though. The officials will tell you they could. They won't say it will or it won't. Right. They say it could play this length on a particular day.
The players don't like if there's no forewarning about we might use this tee over there. And the one at Olympic was just.
Geez, they wouldn't like gala days, would they?
No.
You change your mind halfway through the
no, you just got to find some flat grass at some of these places. And even then, that's quite difficult,
Once
as we found out
grass,
recently.
If it's flat, that's a bonus. There you go.
It will be an entertaining finish, though, won't it?
Oh, very
16,
much so.
18.
16 is probably the key hole. It's statistically where most matches will finish. It's a drivable par 4. We'll have a huge crowd on the left-hand side. It's not an easy drivable par 4. Yes, that is going to be the hole. Like the first hole was at Finca Cortez. That's what everyone's going to remember about that Solheim Cup.
Yeah.
16th hole is what everyone's going to remember about this one. There's no question about it. There's 2 drivable par 4s on the back 9 and a bunch of reachable, I think there's 2 reachable par 5s on the back 9 as well. So you can see what they've done. McIlroy described it as like a book where the front 9 is kind of sets the scene. The back 9, the plot picks up the pace and it gets exciting.
Very much so.
It's kind of been built for purpose. So, architecturally it's probably not the most amazing golf course, but I think it's going to produce a really exciting sort of thing. One thing I do think will be interesting, lag putting. Really quite slopey greens. Depending how fast they get them, it could get silly. But lag putting is going to be really, really key in this, which in foursomes is always awkward. Everyone loves to be left with a 3.5 footer downhill left to right, don't they, to halve a hole. There is one hole, par 3 13th. Now, if they go with a back pin, it's got a huge tier in it. It's front section back. There's a huge tier in it. If the pin's up the back, it's hard to get to, but there's OB just over the back as well. So you're going to see probably a lot of golf balls on the front of that green, and potentially lots of 3 and maybe even 4 putts, which is really not going to be easy. So look, the golf is going to be entertaining and the course will play its part in that.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to it more than I thought I would when I started researching the course. So bring it on.
Hopefully everyone else gets as excited about it as you. Let's look at the sides. And first up are the Europeans, who are at home, of course, and trying to win back the Cup, captained by Luke Donald. They are Rory McIlroy, John Rahm, Robert McIntyre, Victor Hovland, Tyrrell Hatton, Matt Fitzpatrick, Tommy Fleetwood, Sepp Straka, Justin Rose, Shane Lowry, Nikolai Højgaard, and Ludwig Aubert. Pronunciation nailed by myself just there.
Impressive.
Ewan, you've spent the second half of the year in Europe, or majority of it, commentating on many of these guys. Who do you see as the standout sort of key players on that list?
Well, I mean, there's so much hype around Ludwig, isn't there? Aubert?
Aubert.
That's very impressive.
Good or bad for him?
Aubert.
It's been a real baptism of fire as a professional, hasn't it?
It certainly has, and he had a poor final round, obviously, at BMW. I think I was a little bit surprised by that. I've actually been amazed at how well he's dealt with all the hype around him. And, I did a couple of walk and talk interviews with him out on the golf course, and he just seems to take it all in his stride. And I think there's no question that college golf prepares you for that. He was obviously number one in the PGA Tour University. That's how he got his PGA Tour card. When you're number one in college golf, there's so much hype around you anyway. There's cameras. They're basically dealing with what a top professional player would. So the transition hasn't been as difficult. But in saying that, when he went and won in Europe, I mean, that in Switzerland, wasn't it? I mean, that was an incredible performance. But all these rookies on the team, Højgaard, Straka's probably the one that flies under the radar a little bit because he essentially is almost American. He's lived there since he was 14. He's got a southern accent. Yes, he's Austrian, but great guy, great ball striker. Had obviously an incredible couple of weeks. Won the John Deere runner-up at the Open Championship. I expect Nicolai Højgaard will be the standout player, I think, out of the rookies, I guess you could call it, on the European side. He won at that venue. He's got a real he's got that type of aggressive nature. He's won around that venue. He's a long hitter, great attitude, and I think with the experience in the side, Hovland didn't have a great rookie Ryder Cup. He lost quite a few matches in Whistling Straits. I think that'll turn around this time. I see them gelling. They just, to me, as we always see in the Ryder Cup, I just see such a wonderful camaraderie around this side, and you see it week to week on the tour where the guys are best mates. They're hanging out all the time. It's almost like the Americans kind of force that issue a little bit. Yeah,
that's right. They kind of have to go looking for it, don't they, that week?
This European team that's obviously quite disrupted given the players who aren't playing that would normally be around, or even aren't vice captains or captains that have all been involved in league.
They've really lost some experience, haven't they?
But you look at this group and there's a natural cohesion.
Absolutely.
Exactly as you say. It kind of all fits together. I think Ludwig is interesting that there's so much pressure and there's so much attention. It's kind of a great strategy by Donald and these guys that they've probably assessed he can handle it, but it takes so much away from everyone else. Yeah, everyone is focused on this guy. So Nicolai Højgaard gets pretty much scot-free, and he's had a lot of pressure on him as well. But Sepp Straka as well, he sort of gets to coast in. Bob McIntyre is a rookie who's had this hanging around him for a while of will he play Ryder Cup? He gets through, and then your Rorys and John Rahms and stuff get asked a little bit less questions. It's kind of a sacrificial lamb by accident with Aubert. So I think that the cohesion and everything is very strong for them. But the missing element of the list is quite long of Poulter and Garcia and Stenson and Westwood and all these guys.
Oh, let's be honest, they're not playing well. And out of all those players you just mentioned, and then when it comes to having them as assistant captains or what have you, you've got the Molinari guys, you've got Thomas Bjorn in there. Exactly. To me, it's irrelevant. It's just media trying to drum up a little bit of hype around
the names we're used to as well, which I suppose is...
It's a forced change in the guard, which maybe needed to happen anyway.
Yeah. It's a pretty diverse group, aren't they, as the players know. Hovland and sort of Hatton, you couldn't get much further apart in personality and styles of play, could you? But I feel like it does work. Hovland especially, he's a different player now. This year he's been a different player.
Absolutely, and a lot of that's due to his short game. He's always been a wonderful ball striker, but also on that point, 20 years ago you would never have seen a Norwegian, an Austrian, a Dane in the side. It goes to show you the strength of European golf now and how much it is picking up in certain countries around Europe.
And the Ryder Cup's played its role in that. And this is what the Asia Pacific Amateur is doing in this region as well, and the Latin American Amateur, that Augusta National. These things take a long time.
Yeah.
But that's what they're creating.
Absolutely. That
the day will come when a golfer from,
North Korea.
Or Lebanon. Or Lebanon, he's going to get into the Masters. Yeah. And that'll be, and that'll have started. That really started way back when they launched. And you see that we saw it with the Jack Newton Junior Golf Foundation.
Yep.
Same thing happened. We started to really produce players consistently. People go, when they first started, it's this or that. But it takes time, and we're seeing that generational change.
I interviewed the team from Lebanon at the Asia Pacific Amateur last year.
Absolutely.
Great day.
Yeah.
Anyway, as mentioned earlier, the United States lineup is very different to the side from 2021 that look to be setting a new era. They are Sam Burns, Patrick Cantlay, Wyndham Clark, Ricky Fowler, Brian Harmon, Max Homer, Brooks Koepka, Colin Morikawa, Xander Schauffele, Scotty Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, and Justin Thomas. Probably the ones that are going to get the most attention this week, whether or not it's about their play or not, is Brooks Koepka. Only live player involved in the whole thing. Only player to play last week, obviously contractually obliged. Not the lead-in that probably anyone wants. Missed the team plane, so had to fly via Liv, organising him a private plane from Chicago over there.
Tough gig.
Yes.
Tough deal. Yeah. That's not what you want going in. It's kind of not what you want, though.
Grading on a curve, perhaps, but let's be honest.
But the whole team thing, and that's so important to ingratiate everyone together and to have someone coming in as a separate, let alone the fact that his golf wasn't that good last week either, which adds to that sort of pressure. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes because he's been very, very good this year.
It's the part the Americans struggle with, isn't it, is the team thing. And that's historically been the case. As you said, they kind of got to force it when they get there. Europe have this common enemy, this band of brothers kind of thing. Not that it's all beer and Skittles in the European. There's plenty of people in the European camp that don't like each other.
Yeah.
But there feels like a common purpose where the Americans have to try and create it as a more defensive thing. They're the ones who are always sort of under attack, so to speak. And so what you're saying is true, but I don't know that affects the Americans as much because I think they're used to that. That's what they do each time.
I think what I observe working in both the US and Europe and having played over the years in both is I think there are just in general there are more alphas and more egos in America involved than what I see in Europe. And then that's individually. Yeah. So then trying to put that together as a team is more difficult.
The more roosters you put in the hen house, the more the more trouble you have. And the Americans are very much, they're all quite, I mean, what did Wyndham Clark say that he thinks he's better than Rory or something during the week?
Yeah.
And a little bit of that is, niggle prior to the match. And you love that. You like to see that. But there are not many people in the world would have the kahunas to stand up and say that publicly.
Michael Block,
maybe. Yeah, that's exactly.
The one that sort of shows maybe a positive move in the direction of team unity and all that sort of stuff is actually picking Justin Thomas, in my opinion. A guy whose form has been pretty terrible this year.
And it's coming good at the right time.
Yeah, and playing good at the right time. But he's a guy who's been involved in so much of it. You might not like him and might not have a lot of, the antics, but he's been a crucial part of this developing American team in Presidents and Ryder Cups. And they've gone, ignore most of the form. Get him in because he's important to how we want to play and whatever. And Zach Johnson as a captain strikes as one who will probably quietly put together a team. He's not a chest beater. He's not an alpha. No. He's an alpha with playing ability, but he's not a stand in front. Wyndham Clark, interestingly, and Brooks Koepka are very close. Play a lot of practice rounds when they were playing on the PGA Tour together. A lot of time. Brooks Koepka's got a lot of time for Wyndham Clark, so a potential kind of pairing there I think that would be an interesting one. But Brooks did say, I'll play with anyone, I don't care. And he and Sam Burns have, of course, got terrible haircuts to just kickstart the week.
The talent level in that US team is off the charts.
It is.
You just go through every single player and go, can't be beaten, can't be beaten, can't be beaten,
can't
be beaten.
The advantage, apart from winning last time in such big fashion, the advantage the US team probably has is very obvious pairings for the early parts of foursomes and four balls. You've got your Thomas and Spieth, your Schauffele and Cantlay. There's these Scheffler Burns. There's these really clear pairings. The Europeans are a bit more up in the air. There's friendships, but not necessarily playing combinations. Rory and Shane Lowry have been friends forever, but I don't know that they make the best combination, for example. So
terrible foursome pairing, you would think, wouldn't you? Lowry,
absolutely.
Just you can't see that working. What's the problem with the US travelling? 30 years since they won in Europe. If you look at all the players that have been in all of those US teams over those 30 years, you can't imagine that they wouldn't have won at least one on the road. Is there anything in that? Or
I think Appleby said it best years ago, didn't he? They travel like prawns on a hot day. I think there's an element of truth to that, as silly as that sounds. You look at when they've come out here generally to play Australian Opens or Australian PGAs, or they've gone to Europe to play the Dutch Opens or the French. You rarely see them win. You rarely see them content. And, they're so used to the comforts of home that I think they find it a little bit difficult on the road.
Yeah.
And I just, rather than trying to, overcomplicate it, I think simplifying it, I think there's a big element of truth to it.
There's real fun. The success of America in all elements has been this uniformity, hasn't it? McDonald's is the same in Texas as it is in Ohio, as it is in Iowa.
Yep.
This is what Sevi didn't like about America. He liked to go out for dinner at 10 o'clock at night and sleep in the on the US tour, you don't. You go and eat at whatever the chain restaurant is at 7 p.m. and you go to bed at night. It just didn't suit me. I think it's the reverse of that when the Americans travel.
Golf's different. The culture's very different in Europe. It does take some getting used to.
You've got to want it, don't you? You've got to be interested.
Colsaerts was the same.
Yep.
That was the thing that he hated about playing the PGA Tour, that he liked to go out to dinner late at night and sit around and chat and over a drink and whatever, and he couldn't find anyone to do it. He said waking up in another Holiday Inn and sitting there and going, what do I do now?
I spoke to Nikolai about that same thing this year. He played quite a bit of golf in the States. He finished runner-up to Matt Wallace in the Dominican Republic, but apart from that, he didn't really enjoy it over there at all.
No, and same goes for Europe. And I think I spoke to Maverick Antcliffe the other day, who's played in Europe for a number of years after PGA Tour China, advancing all the China Tour, and he sort of said, "Look, I don't love it." He said, I've went to college in the States. That's what I've become used to, and that's that's where I want to get to. So that's going to be my focus. And culturally, America, exactly as you said, Rod, there's things that are home comforts that are more obvious once you actually leave there. It's difficult to find your feet, I think, for someone from that country. Going to Europe is so vastly different. They obviously try and deal with that during Ryder Cup weeks. They bring them in-house. They've got all their own stuff. But it's
chefs. I read a behind-the-scenes story this morning. Ice baths that had to be imported from somewhere, and the chef can do this, and somebody's gluten intolerant, and there's a vegan this. It's unbelievable what they spend on that sort of stuff.
Just going back to the players this week on the US side, the intriguing player I think this week is going to be Scotty Scheffler. He's been by far and away the standout ball striker in the world of golf for the last 12 to 18 months. His putting statistics this year, he was 140th in strokes gained putting on the PGA Tour. He was in the back half of the players on tour, which really goes to show how incredible his ball striking was to be number 1 or 2 in the world for the bulk of the year. But under pressure, in a Ryder Cup, in match play, on tricky greens, as you alluded to, if that putter becomes a little bit bulky, he could be a little bit suspect.
Especially when everybody's talking about it. I remember Vijay Singh talked about this ages ago. He said, everyone was talking about the same thing, great ball striker, putting suspect, and he said he just stopped reading those stories one week, told himself he was a great putter, and he just putted better. Yeah. Peter O'Malley suffered from the same thing. You just keep being told constantly that you're a poor putter. Well, what's going to happen? It has to seep in, doesn't it? He's going to get that every day.
I've heard Adam Scott talk about the same thing about you convince yourself you are because that's what everyone else says. Every week you front up and you answer a question in a press conference about how bad a putter you are, and you go back and look at the statistics and go, I'm actually not that bad. No. But Scheffler is not going to be getting many concessions that aren't absolute kick-ins this week. Yeah. Or he might get a few early in the week to give him a little bit of...
The pressure's on him, isn't it, too, particularly in foursomes, if you're putting first, and you start leaving putts 4 feet instead of 3, and that's that critical range, isn't it? I think 4 feet's the number, is it not? Yeah. 4 feet to 5 feet. The worst putter at 4 feet holds more than the best putter from 5 feet. That's the PGA Tour range. So, yeah, you're right. And then you start feeling like you're leaving your partner these horrible putts, and that's where those pairings become important.
The Americans did a poor job of that last week. First putts were a bit poor when they had their struggles, where they didn't knock it into a really confirmed spot and made it difficult.
Kupcho had no idea for the whole week. Her pace was shocking all week.
The pace was difficult. Yeah. With all that said, we need to pick winning teams. Ewan, your thoughts?
15-13 Europe.
Nice. Margin. I like it. Rodney?
Well, I'm an old newspaper hack, so I always cheer for the story. And wouldn't it be great to see another tie this week?
Oh,
US retained. So I'm going for the tie. It's long odds, but that's what I'm going for.
Wow, that is bold. I'm going to go with Europe as well. No score. I'm not a score guy. I'm not an exactor.
I think we're all agreeing. I think it's going to be close.
I think
it's going to be close, this one. It's.
I think if there's going to be a blowout, it'll be in the favour of America. But I don't think there will be a blowout. I
don't see golf course and stuff like that delivering a blowout.
No,
and form. But It'll be, I think, a close run thing. Not a tie, though. That's
tough act
outrageous.
to follow, though. So.
Who says that? Like last week, there is some other golf around the world, so let's take a very quick look at who, what, where, and when. The LPGA Tour plays a 3-day event after the Solheim Cup, starting Friday this week. A mouthful of a tournament name, the Walmart NW Arkansas Championship presented by P&G.
Suey.
You know who lives there? Scotty Gardner.
Does he in Arkansas?
Yep.
Good
Right.
on you, Scotty.
10 minutes from the golf course.
Good on you, Scott
Good on you,
Gardner.
Scotty.
One of my absolute favourites.
One of the
Scotty
good guys
Gardner.
of Australian golf. Yeah,
Absolutely.
very much.
This, of course, is a favourite tournament of Rod's, Ewan.
It's the
Due to when they get to the 17th and the hog call of Woo Pig Suey to do with the University of Arkansas. Rod is a big hog calling guy.
it's up there. It's got to be one of the greatest things that happens in golf every year, doesn't it? What is it? Woo
Pig
Pig Suey,
yeah.
91 PGA at Crooked Stick. They were singing that out to John Daly
Is
walking around
that
the golf
right?
course every hole.
And he was responding, Jim Beam, Jim Beam. Yeah, it's fantastic. And you see, well, Lydia Ko, I seem to recall a few years ago, they don the hat, don't they? It's
some of them, it's
the
a
pig hat to walk down the...
It's a hog.
and do the,
It's not a pig, it's a hog. Come on.
Yeah. Anyway.
Pinnacle Country
up
Club is the host. Once was called Champions Club. And built in 1990 as a upscale housing development, of course. And it's also the home course to many of the Walmart executives. So a little bit of sponsor watch for you there, Rod. I know you're a big fan.
It's the whole town in Arkansas. Walmart.
Pretty much, it's all Walmart.
Bensville,
Yeah.
I think it's called.
Walmart,
It's
I
just
think,
Walmart.
it's the biggest corporation in the
Oh,
world or
it's
something like that.
staggering. It's off the charts, Walmart.
P&G, of course, is Procter & Gamble for those playing at home in Sponsor Watch. Pretty typical tournament golf course. You got an island green. It's mostly set up for the people who play it week in, week out, so you get some pretty good scoring. In terms of players to watch, there's actually quite a few Solheim Cuppers on their way back here. So Lexi Thompson, Leona Maguire, Danielle Kang, Georgia Hall, Cheyenne Knight, and US captain Stacey Lewis, of course, who's a 2-time winner, I think.
Yeah, good field.
Yeah,
She won
Ataya
an amateur,
Titikum.
I think, Stacey?
Yeah, she won an
She
amateur,
went
but
to
it was a
university,
shortened,
it was short
shortened
range
tournament.
or something, yeah.
A few Aussies as well, Hannah Green, Steph Kiriakou, Grace Kim, Sarah Kemp, Karis Davidson, Sue O, and Sarah Jane Smith. Some thoughts from everyone on a winner, Rod?
Lydia Ko, great track record here. Previous winner, obviously, finished 6 times in the top 10 out of 10 starts and looks fabulous with the hog going down the 17th, giving it the Woo Pig Suey call. So
Yeah, it's hard to
it's an
get past
important
that.
part of it. You've got to look good in the green jacket if you're going to win the Masters. You've got to be able to carry off the hog helmet on the 17th if you're going to win here.
Just looking at the player entries for this event last night, it's a really, really good field.
The field is
Stacked up.
fantastic.
Yuka Sasso, winner of the US Women's Open last year. She was runner-up at the Women's PGA Championship this year. 12th, I think, race to CME Globe at the moment. Hits it a mile. She's winning this week for sure.
Okay,
Beautiful.
there you go. I'm going to go with Ataya. She won last year. She's going to win again.
Yeah.
So that's, pretty simple. Finally, consecutive weeks in Chinese Taipei or Taiwan, depending on who you are and who you want to get angry.
What international incident you want to start?
I don't want to go into it, but it's so confused. Rod, you're going to tell us about the Mercury's Taiwan Masters.
I'm going to tell you very little about it because I'll be honest with you, I completely forgot to do most of the research. And then I thought to myself, Ewan's played in Asia. He'll know all about this. So
That's
he
the
can tell us.
playing from the tips difference. Right?
Yeah, that's right. $1 million purse, so it's one of the big ones on tour. It's got a pretty decent field. Lots and lots of locals, as you'd imagine. Big Australian contingent. I know nothing about the golf course. Don't know anything about the sponsor.
Disappointing. That's kind
Yeah,
of the research.
I'll be honest. I won't explain it, but I got up in the middle of the night and fell back asleep before I finished my research. Australians in the field. Hen, Smythe, Zach Murray, Todd Sinnott, Kevin Yuan, Andrew Dote. Doesn't he just come back out of nowhere?
Doty,
Andrew
yeah.
Dote, just
Plays almost won a few weeks ago, didn't he, in
Yeah.
Scotland?
Yeah.
And Jack Thompson, number 1 in the re-rank on the Asian Tour.
He's in the field. Marcus Fraser, Terry Pulkadaris, Josh Younger. There's some walkers out there. These guys are really good. Aren't they? Marcus Fraser must be 1,000 by now. But another one who went to teaching for a bit and then decided he missed the playing of it. And Tom Power Horn. I've got no idea who might win this. But golf in Asia is very different, isn't it, Ewan, to what most of those Australians.
Absolutely.
Even if you played in Asia a lot, it's still different to anyone.
Windy place, and we spoke about this before we came on air. I mean, the grainy greens in Asia, it takes so much getting used to. Just think about putting on a decent temporary green here in Australia. That's kind of what you're looking at for 18 holes in Asia, and a lot of players adjust their putters, add a little bit more loft. But either way, it does take quite a bit of getting used to. But Travis Smythe, someone who has really gotten used to it, he's runner-up last week and seems to play well week after week. Kevin Yuan from the Australian Golf Club, he's another consistent performer. Doty, you mentioned. Jack Thompson's been playing well this year. Hendy's coming off a win in the European Legends Tour. Definitely an Aussie winning this week, but if an Aussie doesn't win, I see the Big Dolphin giving it a red hot crack.
We were on the Big Dolphin last week, and another one of my favourite people in professional golf winning in Poom Sax-Hansen.
Oh, yeah.
A big Poom guy.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah.
So
24 under last week.
So good. With his fiancée on the bag too. He felt gutted. He lost the All Thailand Tour event a couple of weeks before in a playoff when she was caddying for him, and she got really upset and he felt really bad for her. And so he felt the pressure to win this week, which is just like the best. Some of the Thai players, when you get to interview them after a round, it is the most exciting, wonderful thing of all time.
Just on Trav quickly, he's been a huge live cheerleader right from the get-go. He is motivated to get back there, to play his way back there, I think, and you're going to see that in his play.
Absolutely. You can see what playing and having that stint for a few events on live did for his confidence as well, being around the best players in the world. And love or loathe live golf, just for someone like Trav, the experience, whatever happens to live and golf in the future, for him personally, that's going to be the best thing for him. He knows that he feels he belongs out there. Just needs to be given the shot.
Made a pile of cash too.
Both individually and teams.
Yeah,
I think he's made a couple of million in the last 2 years.
Yeah, very nice.
So who are we going with?
I'm going to pick Trav partly for that reason. He did play really well last week, and he's a bit of a confidence player, Trav. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get up this week.
Yep. You
Jack Thompson.
Good choice.
Good call.
Yeah. Can act as well.
And play the harmonica. I am going to pick Scott Hend.
Yeah.
I think that Legends Tour win in Europe is going to do heaps for Scott.
Yeah.
We spoke about Grain. No one knows Grain better than Hendy. Grew up moving around all around Australia with a military family, and so played some grainy golf courses.
Grew up in Queensland. Lives in Florida.
Yeah, like that's as good as it gets. And 10-time winner on the Asian Tour. He's going to add another one before he's done.
No question.
And
he
also,
almost won in Indonesia.
Yeah, exactly. Hit it out of bounds, and on the Australians, I'm giving myself some props here. I tipped Doug Klein last week. He finished in a share of 9th. So
prompted you to tick. He's a great player and a good fella, but why did you pick him last week? What was it about last week?
There's no need to delve into my process.
No,
just appreciate the results. That's going to do it for episode 33, I think I said, of Playing from the Tips. Ewan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have a real expert on. and the much better half of Bullet GC.
Not last week.
No, not last week. No, but
Logue's still celebrating.
He was very smug after that
Smug Logue is my least favourite Logue.
I think he went straight from Baxter's into the airport, didn't he, to go to the Ryder Cup?
Just so he was there in case.
Rod, it's been a pleasure. And you seem very up and about this week. I can't imagine what's different about this week to make you so happy.
Well, Logue's not here.
Yeah, exactly
so
right. There you go.
Start.
Exactly.
You've got to be on your game when you get the big guns.
Well,
It's right. You've got to make it effort.
Do some. Yeah, that's right. You can follow all the Ryder Cup action and more on the Golf Australia magazine website, golfaustralia.com.au. And given it is Ryder Cup week, go and listen to the Thing About Golf podcast episode John Huggan recently did with Bernard Gallagher. It is absolutely fantastic.
And a heads up, tomorrow, Sam Torrance.
There you go. You heard it here first. Or you heard it here about 30th, depending on when you listen.
Depending on when you're listening, that's right.
If
it's 2024 already, you've missed all that.
You've missed all that. But we've probably got a good guest this week as well. Thank you for listening, and we will be back next week on Playing from the Tips.